Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be working on how to build little signposts so that way the player can see text that perhaps guides them through their journey. To start off, I have made two sprites already. Took me way more time than I'd like to admit, but I have these little two sprites added in here. I have first the marker. This is just thrown in and serves as the little bottom piece to our text box. Notice that the origin point is slightly above, actually 1 pixel above the marker. Just make sure that you have that set up correctly. The other one was the hollow sign. So since it's in space, I've got astronauts. I have a little hollow sign that I have set up rather than like a little wooden sign. You can make the signs however you'd like to do, whatever theme you have for your game. This is just the one that I created. 64 by 64, and then this is itself much smaller and it's just thrown in there. I like to keep the 64 by 64 as that helps placing things inside the world a lot more convenient for me, given that everything in the world is already 64 by 64, or at least that's the outline of it. And so make sure you have those two sprites added in or something to serve as your equivalent. Now that we have the sign set up and the marker sprites created, we need to create a brand new object. We're going to go over to right click, create object. And this new object is going to be our text object. obj_text. And we're going to have 3 events. First, of course, is our create event. In the create event, we need to create a couple of things in here. And so these are just our variables, but we need the speed. This is the speed of characters, chars per frame that we intend on placing onto the screen. This is going to build up our text so that way we see it appear letter by letter or character by character onto the screen to make it a little bit more interesting. The number of letters that we currently have, of course, 0. What is our test string, our default string? I'm just going to call this default. Close that off. What is the length? The length, of course, is the length of the string text. And then what is our current text? What is currently going to be displayed in the text box? Of course, initially nothing. What is the width? Our width currently is 0. This expands as we build our text box. Our height is also 0. This will get built once we actually have the text box set up. And then our border is set equal to 10. All right, we've got that down. I then add my step event. Now, inside our step event, we're going to go ahead and address building the text. So our letters is plus equals the current speed. This just adds it every frame. The text current is going to be equal to the string underscore copy. One more character, of the text. One more character based off of the number of letters we're allowed to have at the moment. I round down, we're using floor. And so our text current, we're just gonna copy that over. Then draw, set font, and oh, we need to set the font. I had already created a font called font sign. Let me go ahead and import that. Let's see. Okay. This is the font that I have for my sign. You can, of course, pick whatever pleases you, cycle through the options, change the size, whatever you'd like. And so now I have my font set up. If the height is currently 0, that means we haven't started anything yet. Then the height is actually going to be equal to the height of text because we just grabbed the font. So now we know the correct size in pixels that our text is going to be. Now width is set equal to the string width of our current text, how many letters we've currently got in there, characters is the more correct statement. That builds it up. Then we keep track of, after we've built up the entire thing, at some point, of course, we want to remove this after the player's read it and been satisfied with it. If the letters is greater than or equal to the length, meaning that we've at least built up the entire message, and the keyboard check pressed, they've pressed literally any key. So long as all the characters have been displayed on the screen and the player has pressed any key, then we're free to instance underscore destroy. But before we do that, we make sure that with the OBJ camera, that it is now following OBJ underscore player. The reason why I want to double check to make sure that the camera follows the player is because of the fact that in our draw event, we pull the camera's attention away. And so over here, let's go into this. This is going to actually draw the text onto the screen. So var half width, this is just something to have a shortcut for width divided by 2. Then inside here, we need to draw the box in the background. That just makes it easier for us to read. C underscore black. Let's see, draw set color, C underscore black, draw set alpha 0.5, slightly transparent, and draw round rectangle at X minus half the width minus our border. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger for you all to read. Y minus the height minus the border times 2. Then X plus half the width plus the border, and finally just Y. Then you specify 15 by 15 and false. And so that specifies the rounded portions. The 15 is the radius of the corners since they're rounded off. And then do we want an outline? No, that's why I set it to false. Half width, I spelled incorrectly right here. Back, there we go. Now draw. Right. This is just the sprite marker at the X and Y values. And so that is why we have the origin point of the marker to be slightly above it. So even though it's placed technically on the same spot, because the origin point is above, the sprite itself, we make sure that this little marker, this little arrow at the bottom, is not overlapping any of our text if any of our text gets down there. And draw set alpha, remove the transparency. Now we can draw our actual text, which is going to use a little script to set stuff up. Let's go ahead and finish this and jump over to the script. Draw set text C_white. We're going to use our sign font, FA center, FA top, and then draw text X, Y minus the height minus the border, and our current text, whatever that might be at this stage. This is not sprite marker, this is SPR marker. There we go. All right, and of course it complains about this because it currently does not exist. Let's go ahead and rectify that. I'm going to create a brand new script. This is going to be draw set text. Inside here, we're going to go ahead and pass in 4 arguments. So I want to, of course, provide a description. This has draw set text. We pass in a color, we pass in a font, we pass in our horizontal alignment, and we pass in our vertical alignment. And what do each of these things do? The color is literally the color. The font is literally the font. And an arg. The horizontal alignment and vertical alignment. Okay. And so now that we have all of that passed in, we can then jump into here, and what does it do? It simply reduces how much we have to type later on by manually setting in what is the color, what is the font, draw set horizontal alignment, H-line, draw set vertical alignment, and this will be V-align. This just sets up or initializes all the settings and values that we want to address how we want to have the text box or the text in general set up. By creating this script, anytime we want to do this, rather than writing out those 4 lines, we can have it set up in this way. And this also forces you to remember to have all of this stuff set up properly, because if you skip certain components or values, you may end up running into problems, then wondering what happened. It's easier if you just have this already set up, so you already know what items you need to address before you create your text. Now that we've got that set up, we need to create one more item, our actual sign. That is an object over here. Let's go ahead and create a new object. And this object is going to be our obj, I'm going to call this my hollow sign. There we go. And what is the sprite? In this case, the sprite is simply going to be my hollow sign over here. And I have one event. It's a key pressed event. Whenever the letter F is pressed, display text. When the letter F is pressed, I want to do something. Well, specifically, let me also increase this, make the font bigger. Right. If the point in circle, if our obj player.x and obj player.y, if the player is within 64 pixels of us, this is our x and y value, and 64 pixels, if it's within that distance of us, and it is not, or we don't already have exist of obj text, there's not already text on the screen, then let me move this down. Okay. If the player is within 64 pixels of us and there's not already text displayed, then I want to instance create. I want to create a brand new -64 just to lift it up. Layer, the layer we're currently in, obj text. I want to create a text box in this position. Text is going to be whatever the text we have defined for us. And our length is going to be equal to the string underscore length of the text. And with obj underscore camera, this is where we get follow is equal to other.id. This is where we force the camera to now follow the text box. I thought it was done in the draw. Technically, it's done whenever it gets created here with our hollow sign. Now that this is set up, we need to actually define what our text is. Now, we could do that in the create event, but then it's not quite as pretty, and you'd have to technically create additional instances or different objects with different text. Instead, what we can do, if we jumped back over to our workspace, let's go ahead, add variable definition, add text, and this is going to be a string. And in here, it is going to instead say our text is nothing fancy. We're going to modify this inside the rooms. And so just to recap, we've created our text object and our hollow sign. Inside the object, we went through the process of creating the variables, building the text character by character, given the speed of 1 character every 4 frames, actually drawing the text onto the screen. And then the hollow sign is what triggers text to be displayed. Now, if we go into our room, I'm going to work around in the testing room. I'm going to add a new layer in here. I'm going to place this behind the player and enemies. Yeah, just right above the walls. This is hollow sign. And so now we have our, then I'm going to place a hollow sign right here. Actually, I'm going to throw it right here. Okay. Then with that set up here, I can double click this, modify the variables. And in this one, I want it to say welcome on the first line. \n is how you can push to the next line. And then level 1. Simple message. Now, assuming everything was typed correctly, which is a big assumption, Let's see what we can have. It's building, so far so good. All right. Let's jump into our testing room. Everything's good. Screen shake's still there. I'm now within range of our sign. Press F. It says welcome, level 1. Alrighty, and I clicked and it went away. All right, I hit tab to restart. So I'm pressing F up here. I'm clearly too far away. Still too far away. Okay, now I'm close enough. Welcome, level 1. I can press anything, specifically any key. So the mouse does not count as a key. I hit space, it's gone now. We now have little text boxes. You can put little messages in. Just be aware of the size of the messages. If you've got a lot to say, it might not work out perfectly. So just be aware of that. But that's actually all we needed to do to create signposts. Now you can throw all the signposts you want, all scattered across your area. So that way it is now interactable and you can give information, usually like, hey, what they need to do, or different hints, or for instance, a sign at the beginning saying level 1, what level they're on, or a sign at the very end, such as right next to our teleporter and says, okay, taking you to level 2. Or you can put signs against multiple portals, so that way the player knows which portal is going to take them somewhere. Add other interactivity, but you now have a means of displaying information within the game to the player. And so with that out of the way, if y'all have any questions or need anything from me, just let me know in class. Otherwise, everyone have a good one.